Can you able to hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Mr. Kanakraj.
Hi, Javan. Hi, Mega. Hi, Kanakraj.
Hi, Mr. Nsa.
How are you guys? And thank you very much for everybody joining in.
Pleasure.
I hope everyone can hear us very clearly. So let's just start then. So welcome everybody to the first of the many webinars of Community Talks, an initiative that has been taken by the CM Today magazine. I'm Megha Anthony, the editor of the magazine, and will be moderating the session this afternoon. Now, before we head off into today's discussion and I start introducing the panel, I would want to quickly give you like an insight into the theme of the series, and that's lessons learned from COVID-19. Now, the last few months have been nothing short of a roller coaster ride for all of us here. And with great pride, we salute everyone in the community management as well as the facilities management industry for truly showcasing and implementing some very great practices so that we can all remain safe. Now the fight is still on against the pandemic. And we felt that there's so many things that we have learned and unlearned in the last few months. And that's exactly what we want to discuss in the course of the next few months. Now this afternoon, we have with us Mr. Jeevan J. DeMello, the CEO of Genesis Corp, Mr. Kanakraj Guruswamy, the Director, Owners Affair, DR Community Management, and Mr. Yunusa Aminu, Senior FM Consultant from Gregory & Jones Consultants. I'm sure all three of them need no introduction, and definitely would like to thank all three of you for coming out here for this webinar. Thank you, gentlemen, and good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Good afternoon to all.
Thank you. So I would like to make this discussion as engaging as possible. I want to encourage all our participants to share your questions, as we progress through the entire discussion. And I shall address it during the course of our discussion as well. Now, let's remember that this is our community and a platform where we can all learn together. So let's make the most of the 1 hour that we have over here and get as much information as we can from our three experts. So coming back to the topic of discussion, and that's the comeback strategy. Are we ready for the next phase? Now, we're all currently experiencing the first stage of reopening. So before we head right into the strategy part of it, let's try and firstly understand the overall impact. So my first question is to you, Mr. Yunusa. What, according to you, has been the impact regionally pre and post COVID in the industry as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's been a roller coaster. It's been continuous learning. It's been day after day of advancements and things that impacts service delivery either through community management, facilities management, and asset management practice as a whole. So I mean, we've seen the FM and community management functions see interdependencies between each other. So you've had, a lockdown period where, community managers have been dependent on boots on the ground You've got a security operative or cleaning operative in the building that's basically, in some cases, the only operative in the building. So there's been a lot of dependency on technology as well, which technology-driven service approach has really proven to be useful in this sense. So you've had organizations that had this ready to go, were quite, it didn't take them long to get into this strategy of fighting back this shutdown and lockdown period. So, and as I said about, it has pronounced the value of resource quality. In some cases, you have FM operatives, you have a cleaning operative that, he has become the most valuable person in that building, taking care of the health and safety of the occupants and, how he handles waste collection and things like that. So it has really shed some light on, resource quality, technology, and the collaboration between all the different parties. It has shown us that we need to all work together in order for everything to work as it should be. And I mean, it's been a really tough time. Continuous learning. Every day, we've had new developments, even not just on the level of the service delivery and operations, even from the authorities. There's been a lot of changes in instructions and guidelines coming on every single day. So everyone had to stay on top of their game and, make sure everything is done as it should be. Because we're talking about safety, health and safety. We're talking about, occupant safety, and it's the highest priority when it comes to operations of any building or asset. So I think, there's so much that has gone on in the last couple of weeks that, I myself, need to really take time to dissect everything that that has been done and everything that people have gone through. And I think it's a learning curve that will still continue over the next couple of weeks as well.
True. Mr. Jeevan, I do understand that you have been part of many international discussions as well. And what has been the international impact, and if you could shed light on some of the best practices that you have seen or heard of?
Thanks, Megha. Yes, indeed. I've been part of many international forums in the last few weeks, speaking to community managers in the United States and Brazil and Mexico and Spain and, all those different countries. And it's very funny because I was doing a webinar the other day and I said something like, we are all in the same boat. And someone actually corrected me and said, sir, no, we are all in the same storm, but we are in different boats. And I thought a lot about that, and that is so true. I mean, it's the same storm, but depending on how we have established ourselves, depending on our personal situation, on our corporate situation, the way we have responded to this has been quite different. And for me, I believe there are different areas of management in this business, and typically it's operational, technical, financial, social, and corporate. I've looked at all these different aspects of the business, and it really depends how the company has performed in the past. And I've seen, and I'm talking on a global level, not just Dubai, real estate management companies. When I say real estate management companies, I'm talking about community management, property management, facilities management, talking about the whole gamut. Those that had a proper crisis management plan, a business continuity plan, they had thought about different scenarios. They are pretty well prepared. But what's happened with companies that did not, were just running their business as and when it occurred, they've had some great difficulties coping with the pandemic as it's happened. Also, the FM providers and maintenance professionals have to carefully decide where to employ their resources, because this has been a challenge. All this while, you've had your plans very clear, carefully designed. You do these maintenance techniques. You plan for these dates. You follow this schedule. Everything has been disrupted. So now the FM providers and the CM management have to decide, what do I do now? What's more critical? Do I need to clean up the swimming pool? Do I need to take care of the chillers? Do I need to worry about the HVAC systems? What's of the more priority? And obviously, we know what are the priority items there. But there are certain things that you can't say, sorry, the swimming pool is not operational, so I'm not going to worry about the water quality. No, you have to worry about the water quality. So I believe that across the world, all community management and all real estate management have come to these kind of issues they need to work upon. The other challenge I found across almost every real estate management company in the world is their staff. Because their staff, I mean, we are giving a lot of praise and accolades to the healthcare professionals and the security guards, and we call them the frontliners. But, our people are the frontliners. Our FM staff, our community teams, our supervisors, technicians, they are the frontliners. And a lot of them, and I know a few in Dubai as well, but I know around the world, a lot of them have actually been exposed. Some of them have been hospitalized. Unfortunately, some of them have even died. So this is another issue that all these real estate management companies have had to deal with, which is alarming. But at the same time, if they're well prepared and if they followed all the protocols, they should be fine.
True. Also, now, as I said earlier, that we are at the first stage of reopening. So my next question is to you, Mr. Kanakraj. What are some of the guidelines of reopening of facilities? What are some of the potential contamination hotspots? And of course, as Mr. Jeevan said, that things that we cannot ignore just because they're closed.
Thank you, Manna. I more elaborately, Jeevan has prescribed certain international challenges, or internationally, how the people supposed to work on, including the continuity plan, more importantly, and what Yunus was prescribing. I'm just giving a few of the points that as a community managers or collectively put together as a real estate management team has to consider. Starting from authority is our first priority, or first supposed to take it as a consideration, because their guidelines is the first priority to be implemented. As a community managers, when reopening facility comes as a guidelines, follow the authority guidelines with in respective specific to UAE and specific to Dubai operations. We have to first governments and as well as the RERA's guidelines to be followed. That's the first priority.
Hello?
We seem to have lost KG.
Yes.
Yeah, Anchor, so.
Okay, we'll come back to that question. We will just get in touch with him. I just want to know, one of the key things, Mr. Jeevan, I just want to get back to you, is the way that communication has definitely changed over the last few months. I mean, here we are today, on a virtual meeting and discussing things. How do you see this whole thing shaping up going forward now?
I think you've heard this being said many times, that prepare for the new normal. And it is a sign of the things to come. Communication has always been the key, right from eons ago. But I think we have felt it much more today than we've ever felt it before. It has taken a whole new meaning. I know I do a lot of work on transformation, business transformation, digital transformation. But a lot of companies and people say, we don't need all this. We're very happy with paper-based stuff, and we can put posters, we can do these different type of things. We don't need to be digitally transformed. The pandemic has brought this digital transformation to the fore. Now, every company worth its salt has to digitally transform. They don't have an option anymore. Okay, George, I'm very fortunate to have Mr. George here, who's from IREM, the International Real Estate Management Institute. And he's based out of Canada. And thank you very much, George, for joining us today. And he can also comment on this, that a lot of these different conferences and different seminars and training programs that were being planned have all been cancelled. And almost all of them are now being delivered digitally. Okay. Now, KG is back. Okay, I'll finish and then KG, you can come back on. And so there is no doubt about the fact that social media and digitally conveying our message has become so important. It's no longer something that only the kids work on, and older people say, I don't need all this social media stuff. Today, it has become the medium of communication for everybody. Now, the challenge we have is that as easy it is for information to be disseminated via social media and all the digital channels, it is also a bit of concern for us, because that's the way that rumors and innuendo and false information get transmitted. And so I see a big role for us as real estate managers to actually curate that information, make sure the right information is being delivered to our residents, to our occupants. This is very critical, because if they don't get the right information, they are not only exposing themselves to failure and to disease and to health situations, but they're also putting us in the same kind of situation as themselves. So we need to be the bearer of the right kind of information. So we have to educate ourselves. We've got to understand. I think KG mentioned about the directives from RERA and maybe Dubai municipality. We need to take all that information, curate it, make it sure that's easy for our residents, occupants to understand, and then communicate that in an electronic format, easy to read and easy to share.
True. I mean, just to give a quick recap for everyone who's joined us right now, we're talking about the next phase. I mean, the last few months have been nothing short of a roller coaster ride, and we're all learning and unlearning so many things. So we've spoken about the regional impact that COVID-19 has had, and also the international impact, and what kind of best practices that we're seeing coming forward. And right now we want to touch upon again, back to you, Mr. Kanakraj, we want to talk about the kind of guidelines that one should follow and the hotspots that one should look out for during the entire reopening of stage 1.
My apology for that, that technical errors. I'm taking into that, Jeevan, what prescribed earlier. I would just, summarize it in a way. Reopening, first priority goes to authority guidelines. Here in Dubai, authority goes to RERA as well as that government of Dubai or government of UAE. So that's one thing. Second thing, our second priority for that, when reopening, it goes to that, how we have got our upkeep, maintenance, including housekeeping regime. That as a community manager, we should have proper plan in detail how we are going to execute, and all those your community areas been identified, and those are included in your plan or not. That's a second priority. If you look at the third, it's not just first you are starting with, it's like you have a regular upkeep, maintenance or disinfection program. I would say like, weekly once, maybe weekly twice, that certain areas that you need to have a disinfection program with specialized company. So that's supposed to form your part of your reopening guidelines or program. It's like the third could be, you should plan it in a way, not only in even hygiene, also the personal and the professional people involved, because multiple stakeholders involved. So that all those stakeholders has to be taken into consideration our program, so that you address all those stakeholders' requirements and incorporated into the part of your community plan. So that's another strategy. Third is the last, or maybe the last things you can consider is the communication plan that you put into your communities, how you are going to address your customers, your visitors, your service providers, all those people, how you are going to address it. So that's also part of your plan. The last, you can say that one, it has to be continuously monitored by the community management professional. Very close monitoring is really required. That is the possible things that we can consider reopening our facilities. Of course, when you look at that in a community, the potential hotspots, if you look at that one, common facilities is the most critical part, which is lift lobby areas, and some of the amenities where every community has a different type of amenities. That is one of the key area to be considered in terms of potential hotspots. Then some of the customers, we may we are not aware, or maybe they are not made aware of the community management professionals where they self quarantines people are there. That's also we need to take into consideration. And also that, most critical part is that the delivery staffs, that at least that, community managers has the proper process for the delivery staffs, how to manage it. And including that, household staffs is one of the main parts for community management professionals, together with the community management team, including FM and rest of the teams. So these are the people to be considered as a potential hotspots when currently and reopening altogether. Put all together. That's my recommendation.
Mr. Yunus, I just want to come to you, and if you could highlight some of the challenges, potential challenges that FM managers could face, or the facility management industry could face now in this next phase. We can't hear you, Mr. Yunus.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's something critical which brings together what Jivan and what Kanagaraj have both said. I think this period has brought about a shift in stakeholder expectations. So you have occupants, residents that are now looking to understand things that they didn't focus on prior to this period. So as an example, you have residents now looking to understand, what are you doing to, to take care of us in this building? What are you doing to protect us from this pandemic? What is the cleaning regime? So the stakeholder expectations has had a shift. And this brings in communication, as Jivan said, there needs to be constant and transparent communication. So they need to understand what is being done to protect us, because now community managers, facility managers, the whole shebang are now like custodians of the end users. So the end users are now, unfortunately, there's a lot of panic at this stage, and people want to know they're in safe hands. So this constant communication that Jivan spoke about really is really necessary at this point. And touching back on Kana's point as well, looking at hotspot, high contact areas, people need to understand that, we're using the lifts, what is being done in the lifts to ensure our...
I think we've lost Mr. Inasa. We're just going to get him.
I just want, Mega, if you can allow me, I just want to touch upon what Yunus said, and it was quite important, and what Raj also said, is that, as community managers, we are actually called to become leaders in our communities. People are supposed to look up to us. They're supposed to look up to us and say, these are the professionals. If I'm sick and if I need help, I'll go to a doctor. I'm never going to question the doctor. If the doctor tells me, take 2 tablets, I'll take it. If he tells me take an injection, I'll take it. I won't argue with him. If I'm in legal trouble, I'll go to a lawyer. I'll take his advice. I'm not going to argue with him. So why do they argue with us as community managers, okay? They're supposed to look up to us and say that, these guys are the professionals. But the reason for this is also our own fault, because we have not stood up as leaders. We have not come to people and tell them, I know what it means, and please, I can show you how I can do this. And I believe as community managers, if we go across as leaders and tell people, listen to me, I'm going to help you. I know of course, in a nice way, not in an arrogant way, people are going to respect us much, much more than ever before. And I believe now, if there is a silver lining under every crowd, this is the opportunities for us, community managers, to actually show who we truly are by allowing the guiding people, providing them, the framework, telling them of the wonderful things we are doing. I mean, both KG and Yunus mentioned about all the different maintenance regimes, all the different actions we are taking. We need to somehow translate that into communication strategies and tell our residents, this is what we are doing for you. So they will begin to appreciate what we are doing, and they will, of course, follow suit.
True. I think you couldn't have said it any better. We have a question before we come back to you, Mr. Yunusa, from Mr. Tony Martin. He's saying the elephant in the room is, of course, how we accommodate the workers. So let's say 4 to a room, then communal toilets, social distancing. So anyone would want to address this or comment on his statement?
Yeah, I do think that is a very sensitive and high priority function to look at, because I mean these are the people that interact with the occupants of the building one way or another. So we need to ensure their safety first. Before we. These are the frontline workers. Before we put them in the front line, we need to take care of them, rightfully so. And I think a lot of companies have done a lot through this period, either being driven by regulatory requirements or on their own initiatives. So as an example, in Abu Dhabi, I've seen this case where there's been a restructuring of the staff accommodations after post-COVID. So there's been a restructuring, and they've even put together isolation centers and the likes within the accommodation. But I have to say that a lot of this was prompted by the COVID. So pre-COVID, yes, it really has been an issue, a long-standing issue. And I think this is something that will change, because it has to be the new normal, because we have seen the devastation it can cause, So I think, right now, some of the facilities where staff are engaged in, they're being asked to issue certificates of their COVID tests before coming into to deliver any service. So I think there's no going back on that. It's bound to change, either immediately by force, or gradually. It has to be something that will change.
True.
I mean, sorry, I just think that's an amazing question, because I think for a very long time we've ignored these frontliners who are actually the real heroes. Okay, we as managers and bosses and employers, we can sit in the comfort of our home and not have to worry about, in fact, being exposed to anyone. But those very heroes, those guys who are actually saving our lives, are at the biggest risk. And employers, FM companies especially, have to, and I know many of them are doing it, and again, Dubai municipality, local authorities are doing a lot of work on this, but it has to change. The way we treat our workers, our frontline officers, the different opportunities we give them, the healthcare we give them, the accommodation that we give them, has to change post-COVID, because this is just, the pandemic is not just going to disappear in one day, 1 month, maybe not even in 1 year. So we've got to plan for the long term.
True.
Yeah.
We also have another question from Mr. Gary, who says that with the current issues we're facing in the communities with budgetary constraints with escrow banking, is there any thoughts on perhaps a review of these new regulations and how practical they are in operation, as we have seen in this crisis that it has caused many issues in the operation? Does anyone want to take
point number one? That's authority. In terms of authority is very constantly and supportive in both sides, community management side as well as in terms of customer friendly side. Okay, so authority has been taken various initiatives. One of the initiatives that everybody's aware that they're even speaking to that local authorities, where possible there is reduction can be obtained, the community can be benefited. So all those measures that taking into consideration. But also what Jeevan would rightly said, in addition to what authorities, somebody else, doing it, at least we as a community managers, as leaders, we need to come up with a strategy. That's rightly that, you started with one of the reopening, how this is going to be after that. We need to also come up with a strategy, how the community, in each community, what are things we have to make measures or steps to protect our, as rightly Jeevan said, that it should be operationally, not only operationally, even financially, how the situation to be handled. So basically, as a community manager, have to come up with the community specific and financial strategy to overcome the situations. And many communities that I'm aware of, I'm not just only talking about the many communities I'm aware of, they are working on currently post COVID situation, how this can be managed financially. So financial strategy they come in with. It's financial strategy not for the company, it is actually for the community specific, so that how the community can be handled in future. So in my recommendation would be, it should be a community specific strategy to be put in place, taking into authority guidelines and support what we received from them. Yes, I leave it rest.
And that's a great
like
question.
To just add something.
Sorry, go ahead, Yunus. Go ahead, Yunus.
Okay. All right. So to Gary's question, I'd like to add something as well, because yes, it is an issue, budgetary constraints, because all of a sudden you have a lot of new requirements that weren't previously in consideration. So as an example, now you've got, provision of bins for disposing of masks and gloves. You've got new regulations that require disinfections and this and that. So there's a lot of, there's some financial impact on this. And, service providers are being asked to do things, at the push of a button. The lifts having to put stickers to, for social distancing and this and that. So things are required with immediate effect, and this has a financial impact. So Gary is right. There needs to be some kind of way of streamlining this financial impact to make sure, everything is being done, but yet it's financially feasible as well. And it's, because right now, I've had instances of service providers who are struggling at the moment, because they've had a ramp down and downsized on staffing to cope with the current lockdown and the crisis. But yet again, they're delivering some additional services that weren't initially planned for and budgeted for. And these need to be approved and need to be, it's really something that's going to hit everyone back.
True. And how about, Mr. Jeevan, you wanted to add something to that?
No, I think they've answered the question. I think Gary brought out a very important point. I believe community managers, even FM providers, is kind of unduly pressurized, because we are supposed to deliver amazing results under new, stricter guidelines, which are going to cost, of course, more money, because this is not going to cost less money. The budget will have to be probably increased, and yet we have been called to reduce costs because, of course, people are going to find it challenging to pay. So it's not really an ideal situation for anyone. So we just have to become more creative, and hopefully the powers that be will work closely with us to see how we can create a kind of a win-win situation for everyone. So I'm just going to leave it at that point, but it's a well-taken question.
Yeah, I think creative is something that we have seen as well over the last few months from many of the service providers. Mr. Kanakraj, I want to address the next question to you. What have been some of the key lessons that you have learned or unlearned in the course of the last few weeks?
To be honest, that there are many learnings, because it's all of a sudden that you put in a difficult situations, and few unlearning as well. That I want to just keep it a very summarized way. That first, the key learnings I would just bring it to everybody's there. We all have to adapt a community specific contingency plan, which is my first recommendation to everyone, including myself, even our own team. We are in the process of preparing a contingency plan for the communities. So at least in future, we don't face such crisis in budgetary constraints, whatever we are talking about today, we don't face it in future. So that's one of the learning. Possibility of adding one of the community budget line item like a sinking fund. Why don't you think about all of us to come up with one of the contingency fund, which will not be used for, kept it for aside, only used for certain emergency situations. So that will allow us to, not to go through such a financial crisis situations. And second point, I would just, what the learning we come up with, we are setting up a crisis committee as a set of committee experts The experts mean which includes maybe health and safety, one of the financial, one of the technical, one of the operational, one of the community management professional together form a committee. So that committee will manage with certain roles and responsibilities, defined roles and responsibilities, and we call it as a charter. Then you put in place, they will manage and address, and they will come to the community end users to give what kind of advice, what kind of plan they're supposed to put in place, and how they're going to manage it, how the communication plan, all they devise it. So I would strongly recommend to consider as one of the learning is there. Crisis management committee with experts, with defined experts. That's undefined rules. That could be one of the things. Then mostly, we have to also start to think that such situations, a recovery plan is supposed to be in place. You need to have a plan A, plan B kind of things, so that people have to prepare a recovery plan, how they're going addressing all those their financial, operational, and technical, whatever the requirements related to the community, sit and chart it down and prepare a plan. So that may be then not only preparing a plan, also just implementing, monitoring how it goes, the plans. Maybe they can do the amendment while the plan was implemented. That's one of the things. The other learning will be skills upgrade, mostly that I'm watching Jeevan's and some of the people's webinars. So the lot of skills, reading books, the skills upgrade is one of the things. It's keep on everyone has to do. I'm also doing myself, so I'm sharing with that one of the point. And mostly we all think about any news comes, we all go into negative mode, but we took a one step. We always stay in positive, thinking positively, and addressing anything comes negativity also in positive manner. So that's one of the things I wanted to address it. And remember that I always telling internal my team, in majority or many of the biggest investors that become a popular today, they all started the business in crisis situations, and today they become a billionaires. So the crisis situations, it's something that we have to take it positively. We can also come up with that situations. I'm talking about professionally, also community. If we have done it in the past in the best way and do certain things, maybe our community could be one of the best community in future as well. That's unlearned. Mostly in very few. Normally, I stop watching that news, because if you open up channels and social medias, it's other than COVID-19, nothing else will be there. So that you start to internally getting pressure, so that I don't watch anything else in a day. Maybe evening hours or something, in half an hour, 1 hour, that I used to watch that news and social medias. Rest I just stopped completely. That is one of the things maybe that I'm moving forward, still want to continue, not too much into that social medias, only limited ourselves to in certain things which is really helping us professional and personal as well. Then again, the crisis situations, teaching one lesson is everybody's how to manage your finance. It's individual as well as our community, as well as the company where we are into. So that's one of the things we always put in part of that our recovery plan, as well as the strategy how we can manage our communities. And again, everyone has to do that, keeping that mobile and always checking the mobiles. I always try to keep the mobiles away from me. Whenever the calls comes, you will attend. Otherwise, what happens, you tend to go there and take your mobiles and check your social media, then diversions can happen. So these are the three things that I put it as a unlearned. So that's all from my end.
I think one of the key things, we did touch upon it a bit with Mr. Jeevan regarding the communication with the residents. But what I want to ask all of you, in fact, is how does one go about re-establishing that trust with the residents, with the occupants? What approach should one take? It's an open question. Any one of you could take it.
I think it needs to be a very proactive approach, whereby you shouldn't, all of us shouldn't wait for people to request for information. It's all about, pre-planning and letting everyone know. So there should be transparency in this. We're talking about all this, crisis management and, skill improvement and all this. But ultimately, we need to remember we're doing it for the end users. So, we need to be in constant communication with the end user. Something as basic as setting up a crisis management team needs to be communicated, so they know proactively, like, this is what we're all doing to protect their interest. I think that's something to consider.
Kanak Raj says something very nice about, how this negative news is affecting all of us. And I was doing a webinar recently about that we need a lot of positivity in our lives. It's not only that we need the positivity, we have to even show or give people that positive spirit all along. So whenever you enter a community or a building, you will always see, don't do this, or don't do this, or don't touch that, or wear your mask. I never see any positive messages. How about we community managers actually putting some positive images around, telling people of the wonderful life they have, the things that they do, things they have to be grateful for. There is something that I practice every morning, and I don't know if anybody is interested in this, but I never look at my phone in the morning. The first thing I do when I get up, I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. I write them in little bits of paper, 3 things that I'm grateful for. And I actually close those papers and I put them in a box. I've got a little box I call the gratitude box. And every day I put in three things. Believe me, and every time I feel depressed, all I do is open that box. I take out one thing and I read just one of those things that I'm grateful for. Believe me, I'm out of my depression immediately. So just like me as a human being, just imagine if you put some very positive posters or send a positive message to our residents, they're going to be so grateful. And that's the way we can build trust with people. We're not just robots. We are the messengers of hope. We are telling people, don't lose hope. We are here. We are here to guide you. We're going to take you to the strong. We are all in this together. People need to hear that now more than ever. And to me, this COVID-19, obviously it's a catastrophe, but to me, it's a great reset button. I was, there was a message, and I'm sure people have seen this on social media, where there was a post saying that, God, can you please reinstall 2020 because this has a virus? I'm sure you've seen that. And I thought it was so interesting, how you're going to reboot. So why can't we reboot ourselves? Like, this is an opportunity for our profession, for us as community managers, to reboot, to reset, to relearn, to reinvent. A lot of re's there. But using these type of things, we can actually become somebody different once this thing is over and we enter the post-pandemic stage.
True. Here we are talking about re-establishing that trust with the occupants, but what about the owners themselves or the developers? How does one go about that?
Well, you see, you're absolutely right. We have owners and we have the occupants. Okay, so you have the landlords and the tenants. So I happen to be a landlord as well. So it is a very. In fact, a lot of people are complaining about landlords and saying things like, "Oh, my landlord is not willing to reduce my rent. He's not willing to defer my payments." In my case, I've actually done that. I've deferred my tenant's payment for over 3 months now. But people have to understand that landlords are owners as well, right? And they are in the same situation. They've got mortgage to pay. They've got various. So when we are communicating with our occupants, I do not believe that we should let aside our owners, because, as community managers, we owe to the owners. The owners are the owners of the building. And I think on that front, you've got to tell them how well the building is protected, how the value of their properties, being increased. There was a webinar just before this, and Waqar, and I think Waqar is here on this call as well. Waqar did an amazing presentation about the importance of reserve funds. Now, reserve funds, having enough money in the building account is so essential to tell owners that your property is being protected. The value of your property is never going to go down because we've got enough money to replace those capital good items, to repair major big ticket items. And I think that gives a big relief, because this is going to pass. This pandemic is going to pass. And then the value of that property is really going to depend on how well you took care of it, how well the maintenance have been done throughout this time, and how much money do you have remaining in the bank for future use.
True, true. Of course, I want to encourage our attendees to ask in their questions as and when so we can address them. So coming back to the discussion now, I mean, again, I would want to open this question out to everyone. What do you see the way forward now? What kind of approach should both these industries, be it community management or facility management, should take going forward?
So I can just a few words, and then maybe I pass on to Eunice. I think that we've all concentrated on a few things so far. Okay, one is prevention of infection, continuity of operations, awareness and communication, and protection of lives and property. These are the typical principles that community managers, if all real estate managers, look into. But I think now that we're in this new normal, we have to think a little differently. And one of the principal things that are going to change for better, in my opinion, is the work from home culture, which has actually been missing in this part of the world. I know in the United States and Europe and other countries, working from home has been pretty normal, but it's never been accepted or dignified over here. But now it is. And even the post-pandemic era, a lot of people are going to be working from home. That is not only us as professionals, but even general people. So you're going to have a lot more people living in your building during the working hours that you have currently. So as community managers, we have to look at that aspect also in a very visionary manner almost. And how do we actually help those people living and working from our communities?
Yeah, you make a great point there. It actually impacts not just the residential living space, but the workplace as well. So it's all real estate. And the thing that I want to point out is, so this new approach, there is no need to reinvent the wheel, because there is a lot already out there that is. An example, since this crisis started, there has been a lot of ISO publications that have been made public. So when 22-300 series, which is on resilience, business continuity, emergency management, anyone could go online and get access to these guidelines. Even for FM, the 44,000 series, there's business continuity and emergency preparedness there. So a lot has been made publicly available to support everyone. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel to look at, a new crisis management plan or all that. Even the latest, so as an example, ASHRAE have done a publication on HVAC system post-COVID. And this is out there for people to look at and adapt to your, industry or your particular sector of real estate. So there is, in essence, there's so much material out there that is made available. Everyone is essentially trying to help each other at this time, material that was online for sale has now been made open access. So there's so much support there for us to utilize, And another thing I'd like to say is a lean service approach. So for facilities management in particular, there is definitely a change that's coming to a lean service approach. Even before the COVID-19, Javan, we recently had the RERA challenge. There's been pressure on the economy even before the COVID-19. So I think there's no escaping this lean service approach where, it's no longer about putting boots on the ground. Okay, I have a building. Let's put cleaners, let's put, security, let's put this. It's about thinking of now lean approaches where we look at, strategic ways of, classifying areas, classifying assets, criticality, and look at how we can reach, more lean approaches to service. Recently, I was having a discussion with Gary. I guess Gary is with us as well. The value you can get from one skilled resource is probably a lot better than, you have 5 resources that are just dummy resources standing there. So I think this lean service approach that has been talked about for a while will definitely need to come into effect now.
True.
I must endorse what Eunice is saying, if you don't mind, Megha. Maybe I'm speaking too much, but I just want to endorse what Eunice is saying, because, I don't know if anybody has heard of this term, the gig economy. And giggers are those freelance workers. You'll find them on Fiverr.com, you'll find them on Upwork.com, and people working from home. I believe this pandemic has given rise to this gig economy. So people are going to work from home anyway. They're going to be a lot of freelancers. You're going to have a lot of smart people who are going to choose to work as freelancers than full-time paid staff in an organization. Now, this is going to actually help the organization because, as Yunus said, and even Gary has mentioned, I was just reading his chat, you'll find there are smart people who don't want to be attached to one organization and be paid a lot of money. Rather, they'll work from home or they work on this by themselves, provide very good service, intelligent service, data-based, knowledgeable services to various organizations. And so you reduce those boots on the ground, as Eunice mentioned, because I believe that we are still in that mindset of the more people we see, the better the work is being done. It is not really true. It's really the brains behind. What are the strategy you have in place? Who's really thinking of the entire scenario? How they're actually planning the whole thing? And I can see that now that companies want to right size, not downsize, but right size, they're going to look at this in a very deep way. And I believe it's going to be good for everyone. So my advice to a lot of our community members, our professionals who are out there who may have lost their jobs or in the danger of losing their jobs, please consider yourself a gigger or a gig economy professional. Try to get all the training that you can, get knowledgeable, learn to market yourself, develop a personal brand so you can become employable by other companies, if not as a full-time staff, at least as a part-time or a freelancer.
I think that's really
one more point, adding one more point, like, collectively, when you put adding Jivan's comments as well as Yunus comments, the important things of the company at the moment, everyone should focus there instead of just focusing on only cutting the staff. Rather than they have to focus collectively in all the aspects, including if a company starts from the financial aspect. Mostly people go into only financial aspects and take the decisions. But in my view, because that all the assets, the most critical assets is there, that skilled labors, which is Yunus and Jeevan explained. But in a collectively, you have to put in the right set of people, in the right set of tools to come up with a proper strategy to manage or moving forward the direction. So in my personal view, it should be in every areas of operations of the company or the community has to be looked into detail and collectively come up with one of the mechanisms which can be adapted for this particular community. Keep in mind that one of the good things, now we are all sitting in a different places. Instead of traveling, we are sitting one place addressing all this information to the wide audience. So this is using of one of the technology. So this is one of the tips that company can take it forward. The similar way, the various innovative or collective approach the community should take it or the company should take it moving forward. So that is one of the best way to move on.
I think we're getting a lot of good comments as well, a lot of positive comments from what all of you would have to say. And one of the key things that everyone is saying is that exploring the whole relationship between the community manager and the facility manager. This is, in fact, one of the topics that we will be exploring in the coming weeks. But do any of you have anything to say about that?
I mean, this has been, and I'm sure Yunus has a lot to say, so I'm going to say very little, but I think this has been something that has been talked about for a long time. The community manager, the facility manager, but we are really both sides of the same coin. We have to be totally interdependent not dependent, but interdependent on each other because we need each other. There's no question about it. The facilities management team have a role and community managers have a role. We are not against each other. We're not fighting. I think there has to be transparency, and I think Gary has really put it in a very nice way, having a very transparent relationship. Tony Martin has said the same thing, and I really want to thank them. Yunus?
Yeah, true. I mean, this is something that has been, if you remember, Megha, I think it was August 2019, your magazine, where I spoke about moving from I can't remember how I called it, but moving from something to strategic partners. So I think, yeah, this is definitely something that needs to happen, because you have a culture where, the facilities management team feel they're being squeezed, and, there are hidden costs all over the place, and, the community managers don't trust the service providers. And so this whole friction is definitely taking its toll on the industry. And I think, as Gary said in one of his comments up there, this COVID-19 will definitely highlight that, and it's something that needs to be addressed immediately. I mean, at the end, the objectives are the same. They need to be aligned, and then everyone can work towards the same goal.
True. Before we do have just about 5 minutes left, are there any other thoughts that any of you would want to share?
In adding this to points, one point to be considered there: every service provider to be treated as a partner. When you partner, in the sense that when they're part of your community, they're part of that. What Jivan, there's a transparency among all the community managers. I think we should build the trust with all our service providers. They are our partners. Without them, we can succeed. So whatever that success of the community is depends on that, even the service providers support as well. So that we have to collectively work together as a partner. I think that mechanism would really work. So treat them as a partner, and also trust them as a partners, and give them the confidence and get the same confidence. I think that the overall the community will be coming, because we all collectively working together, putting things. I think we should treat them as a working partner.
I think this discussion has been quite some time, like you said, Mr. Jeevan, but looks like it took us a pandemic to actually relook this whole relationship between all the stakeholders, and actually come and sit on the same table and discuss all of this as well. So I guess that's the positive side of looking at this whole situation also.
Exactly.
Well, we've had some really great comments and some amazing inputs from all three of you. And, in conclusion, definitely, I'd really want to say that this whole situation, yes, as difficult and challenging as it may be, as we said, positivity is the key out here, and we have to look at the brighter side and move forward, because there is no going back now. It is the new normal. And I truly believe that conversations like this will help us initiate better standards within the society, and in turn create a safer place for us to live in tomorrow. So thank you all again, and we will be back next Tuesday with another interesting session. So do stay tuned, and until next time, please do stay safe.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.